I'm interviewing my grandfather. I call him Jaja. And we're currently in Kampala at my grandparents' house. And I'm just going to be asking him a few questions about his life in Uganda and about literature, because that's what our class is about. So we'll begin. So, where did you grow up, and what was your life like before you had all of your children?
Okay. That's a long time ago. As you know, I'm now 81 years old, going 82. So, but I remember it all. I grew up in, I was born in Uganda, grew up in Uganda, grew in a very Christian home. My father was a clergyman, pastor for the Church of Uganda, and he grew up to become a canon in the church. Now, our growing up was, the bias was on behavior, Christianity. We read the Bible. The Bible was, when we were growing up to the age of about 8, was the book to read, and the quiz book that used to use us. But it gave us impetus to read, because the Bible also has very interesting stories, and used to pick them, stories which would attract children to know more. Stories about Moses being. So I grew up in Uganda, and I went to school in Uganda. We're a big family. We are 12 in the family, but we all grew up very well, thanks to God, and went to good schools. Our mother insisted that they have no wealth to leave us, but education. So we went to big school, good schools. The boys' school was King's College Budo, and the girls' school is Gayaza High School. That's where we went, and we got very good education, which led us to develop to go up to universities. For me, I went to university in England.
Oh, wow.
At the London School of Economics and Political Science.
Wow.
Where I did economics. And then former headmaster, told me to think about a profession in communication to people, which is, they call it librarianship, but now they call it information systems. So after my course at the University of London, London School of Economics, I went to Loughborough University and did a course in librarianship for the British Library Association. And after that, I worked a little bit. I had become interested in England, but then my big brother Henrik passed through and said, "You are not going to stay here. You must go home." I said, "But I don't have money to go home." So he gave me a ticket to come home. Lo and behold, that was about 1960, about the year of independence of Uganda, 1962. Yeah. When I came back here, I found my young brothers had already married. They had children. They had houses. I said, "No, I'm not going to stay in England to stay in it." Well, so I went back, packed my things, and came back. And there you behold, at that time, people were, they were not, where the country was just growing up, and in many areas of importance in the civil service, in the business and so on, Ugandans were few. So the moment you had a professional job, people monitored you. So when I came here, people had monitored me, offered me 3 jobs, which I didn't apply for. The one was to work in a development corporation. The other was to start a national insurance corporation, going back in for another year to study, so that one I dropped. I said, "I'm not going back to England." Then I was given to work at the University of Makerere, the only university then in the library and library school. And in 1 year I became the head of that unit.
Oh, wow.
Up to a long time. And that was very exciting for me, because that's me. I want to talk, I want to give people information. So it was very, very proper. And I did that for 12 years. When problems came into our country. We had political problems, which brought me right to front with Idi Amin, who was president then and leader of the country. I had also taken up part-time work on radio, the only television we had and radio we had. And I was I was reading news and producing a program every 2 weeks about Uganda. And Uganda, what Uganda was doing. So there were people didn't like me. That government didn't like somebody who had influence. So, like one day I was arrested, just like that for nothing, and taken to a military barracks called Machindi Military Barracks, where I stayed for 1 year.
Oh wow.
But luckily, I survived because many people didn't survive there. I survived and I was released by Amin himself. So that's when I was released after working a little, pretending that I was here, I decided to go away. But I go back to my young life. I met my wife Veronica in England.
Oh.
She was studying.
Really?
So way back, she was studying nursing, studying to be what do you call it, nursing, but there's a nurse, to be a nurse. And we, as Uganda, because community we used to meet a lot from time to time. So I noticed her, she noticed me. But then there was no real interaction until we used to meet, but until we came back here.
Okay.
When she came back, I think when it's 1964, I was established, I was single, and my father was on my heels. That, no, you're home, because the university gives you a big, beautiful home.
Yeah.
And he said, no, your home needs someone to be with you here. So every time my father came, he said, you're still alone. So I remembered Veronica. And she was also working for Makerere when she came, as in a place which was teaching home economics, home health in the field. Health. It's a new project. It was a new project, and what do you call it? Anyway, it will come to my mind. So we got to know each other, and soon after, not even a year, we got married.
Oh.
And there we were. Yes, because we knew each other. There was no pretense about not knowing each other. We knew each other and knew where we come. We were in the same institution. So marriage became easy, and we got married, and God gave us children.
Yeah.
Which you know
Yeah.
you know very well. And but I was also concerned in sport. As a leader, I was the leader of the best sports team, Express Football Club. I was the chairman. That was winning, and that brought a lot of jealousy of the armed groups whose teams we were beating. And when we were beating them, people used to shout, "You people, you don't even know football." So also that was the reason Amin put me in prison. That was bringing politics in football. That was his reason. But I was served. I left, and then when I got out of here, of course, I left Veronica behind to pretend that I was just going out and coming back until we got a job. I went to Nairobi. My sister was working in Nairobi, so I had somewhere to stay. But luckily, the University of Zambia had a vacancy. And in the past, people who were now in responsibility in Zambia, one of them studied at Makerere University.
Oh wow.
So they said, no, a chief librarian of Makerere University can't be unemployed when they are looking for our new university for chief librarian. So they called me out, put me on a plane, normal plane, not a special plane. And I met the president himself.
Oh wow.
And he said, I went to Makerere. We have a lot of faith in you. They come and help us with our library and train the Zambians, young Zambians coming up to take over. So I went and worked in Zambia. And then Zambia, may I continue with my work before I go to anything else?
Yes.
Okay. So in Zambia I worked for 2.5 years. Then the African Development Bank, which has its headquarters in Ivory Coast, in Abidjan, came and had a meeting in Zambia. And I was on the committee to get them to know, to get all the information they want as a development institution. And the man I was with was also the vice president for administration. So after meeting him, he called me to his hotel, and he said, would you like to join African Development Bank? Because we are opening up a new unit called communication unit, which will call everything to do with communication, telephones, books, project documents, newspaper, anything that to do, so that what your institution will be doing is to take out all that is to do with development in Africa. And development which we can be copied from outside, elsewhere, to use schools in Africa. That was a very exciting job for me. Really very exciting. I was doing a lot of responsibility, and I had had enough experience of doing it well. And I had a good staff, really, who were not jealous of me, but they were ready to learn. So I worked there for 12 years. We were there for 12 years.
Yeah.
No, more, 14 years. Until I came back to Uganda on retirement in 1996.
Oh wow.
Yes. And since then, I've been here doing the work of a retired old man. I wasn't old then, but we have a family home. I think you went to Kamunyi last time, but you were too young.
Yeah.
That's how where we came. When in this country, when you say I come from Uganda, you have to say where, because everybody can be pinned to a village where they come, because we are settled. We settled in our place. That's our ancestral home. That's where everybody is buried of that family. You had my big brothers who died and so on. They were buried there. Our father likely and our mother were not buried there because they were leaders in the church. They were buried at the cathedral in Namilembe. But this is our burial place, so we got land there. So I started growing oranges, little things like that to keep me busy. And also took part in other activities, church, the community.
In grade school or high school, what type of literature would you read? And were you exposed to African literature at a young age?
We were in a school which was Anglican church school. Most churches, the schools which were there, we were living under British colonialism.
Yes.
The British were governing this country. So even the schools were made up, schools were based on the system in England. We had a library. The library, of course, was filled with books from America, from Britain, it was English, in English. We didn't have many books in our local languages, except at the very lower class, our group class where you had to learn to read, of course. There were, yes, as I went up to university, then I was open to African literature, mostly from Ghana and Nigeria. And we had one or two people here, but their books were not many published. Many are not published books, but they were local available. The newspapers, most of them were in English. So at that time, I couldn't say what. We knew there were African writers. And as we become more politically oriented, we insisted on getting this information. And a few books started trickling in. At the university where, of course, I eventually worked at Makerere. You asked about high school. High school, no. High school was you had to read English. You had to speak good English. If you did get English, you didn't pass English, you don't go on. That was the regime. So it was, no, we're not reduced to that. We are meant to be a real good English knowledgeable people. But as I grew up, as I became older, most of the books kept coming. Especially as I say, the titles can't come now because my computer, the brain, can't release them immediately. But mostly from Nigeria and Ghana, those were the most book. They were advanced in writing. The Chakebe and what the other, well, I can't remember now offhand. I can't remember them offhand. But this African literature were introduced to later. We were born early because now, yes, the books are there. The books are there. And Uncle Yosia will find you some books or some titles. He's about being a writer is now more sensitive, more knowledgeable about what is available. And also get you some easy literature about Uganda, a small book. More than almost what they give to tourists, but much more than that. You can get that hold of that. But although I say the high school was English oriented, it was good. It put us ready to meet the challenges we were going to meet at the jobs we were going to do. The jobs were also run in English system. So you were made to become, you were taught to become either government civil servant or if you worked in business, you have to be oriented with English business systems. And that's what we've inherited in this country.
Yes.
So it was not a bad foundation at all. Although when politicians talk about it, they seem to think as if we're enslaved. No, but we're given type of education which was going to be firmly rooted into our country, and you cannot uproot it. So we're doing well with that. Yes.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'm going to do the next. Since you're my grandfather, what is your tribe, and is that my tribe as well?
Of course, you use the word tribe, but we try not to say it's tribe. It's ethnicity. The people who are together, they have their own culture, they have their own language, they have their way of life. I'm a Muganda. Muganda, that's if I'm a Muganda, but the ethnicity is Baganda. It's a kingdom here in Uganda. The others were kingdoms, others are not kingdoms. But there are about 35, if I remember, ethnicities, with their own languages, with their own cultures. But that is the beauty of Uganda, that one can produce a play, or can produce something, bringing so many ethnicities with one. And these ethnicities were helped by education, which brought young people together in different places, different schools. And and of course the language, the official language is still English.
Yes.
But at the local level, in the local administration units, their own language, like in Baganda, we have Rochiko, which is a small, well, not parliament, but it's just, yes, I would say small parliament for our area. We use Luganda, our language. We write, these languages are written. There are books there written in these languages. And, but so you come from Buganda in the sense that your grandfather, your mother is a Muganda, but when she marries out of the group, the Baganda group, then in our culture here, she moves to the other group.
Okay.
And the children born take the ethnicity of their father. Yeah. So answer for me, I regard it as Muganda. Didn't I give you a Muganda name?
Namtivi.
Exactly, Namtivi. That's for Mamba clan, the landfish clan. That's our total. Namtivi. Okay. We'll talk about that some other time.
Okay.